Hey everyone, it's Clayton here with a guide on how to install a case fan onto your Xbox 360. So this is the actual finished project here with the case fan installed. You won't have this case window, but that is something you could do later, but I'm not about to show that right now. So this case fan is, I don't know, it just improves the cooling of your Xbox 360. I really recommend installing it if you have the know-how, just because it's gonna pretty much prevent your Xbox 360 from getting 3 red lights. It's not guaranteed, but I've had this Xbox for well over 3 years, and I leave it on for days at a time, and it hasn't given me red lights yet. So I don't know, I can almost guarantee it's because of this case fan, because I've had this other Xbox 360 and I just started using it. It's almost brand new. I just had it sitting around for like a year and a half or so like that, but I've just had it laying around, and I just started using it for probably a week, and I got the red lights after a week. I'm like, holy shit. So I thought, I think I should show an actual guide on how to install an 80mm case fan to help prevent the 3 red lights from actually happening. So what you're going to want to start this is a power drill to drill the connections, well, drill the holes. I don't know why the hell I said connections, but you're gonna want to drill the actual holes with this. You're gonna want 2 drill bits. The smallest one is a 1/8 drill bit, and the other one is 11/64 drill bit. You're gonna want a 76mm hole saw. This will be used to cut the hole for your case fan. You're going to want a 80mm case fan. You can use any color. As you can see, this one's black, but you can use, the one that I used here is clear, and it has blue LEDs installed as well. And I've been using this forever and it hasn't done anything, so I don't know, if you want you can add the extra LEDs on there. I just had the shitty black fan, so that's what I'm going to be using. You're also going to want a hot glue gun to glue the actual connection you're going to make to your motherboard, just to help prevent any short circuits that you can do, but it's pretty unlikely. But I don't know, I recommend covering it because it can happen. So you also are going to want some aluminum foil tape. This will be used to tape your CPU. Because all you're going to want to do here is just simply tape the top of it. As you can see, I have a little bit over the edge there, but you're just going to want to put it on top of the CPU heatsink to stop the air from blowing in the top and blow in the front instead. And the whole reason for that is to help improve the cooling. You're going to want some extra wire. I have mine pre-cut and pre-tinned, well, just so that it'll be easier when I get into the tutorial, but you can do that yourself. I'm not about to show that. It's pretty basic how to cut wire and put some solder on the ends of it. It's not rocket science. Okay, and you're also going to want some mounting screws just to mount your actual case fan to your Xbox 360 console. A screwdriver to screw in the actual screws. Some extra solder. I'm using a lead-free silver-based solder made by AIM, which is a higher quality solder. You can use any quality solder. This will be just used to reflow the trace that we're going to be soldering to, so that it's just a hell of a lot easier, and you're going to have a way better connection if you do this. If you don't, you're going to have a pretty poor quality connection, and I don't know, it's just not recommended. And you're also going to want wire strippers just to strip the wire that you cut. You're going to want electrical tape to cover up those actual connections that you're going to be adding on to the wire, because the whole reason for this extra wire is to add on to my 80mm case fan and give me more play when I'm cleaning it or taking apart my Xbox, because you're not going to be able to remove this, but it'll be a permanent connection. You could set up something, but I'm not about to. Just easier if you make it a permanent connection and add on some extra wire to give you the play, because that's really, it shouldn't ever die. Case fans last forever. I've had that case fan on there for ridiculous amounts of time now, and hasn't burnt out yet. So this is just so when you do, you'll connect this piece to your motherboard. One will be a ground, one will be the power, and then you're going to connect this to your the other end to your case fan to add the extra wire in there to give you more play. You're going to want a fiberglass scratch pen. This is recommended. You don't need this, but you're going to use this to clean up the traces that you're going to be soldering to, just to make it easier. And you're also going to want a soldering iron. Mine's a bit higher quality than the average soldering iron. You can use any type of soldering iron will do. And some sandpaper just to clean up the actual holes that we're going to be drilling. And you're going to want an Xbox 360 with this top faceplate. After you have that, you should have everything that you need to do this guide. So I'll get started. Okay, so now what you're going to want to do is simply start by placing your aluminum foil over top of your CPU, if you haven't already done so. After you've done that, which I already have, you're going to want to go on and cut that wire. After you cut that wire and pre-tin the ends, then you should be ready to go on to the next step. And after that, what I'm going to do is simply start cutting the hole. Okay, so some Xbox 360s have a metal piece on top of the case. There'll be another metal piece on the actual faceplate. I'm going to cut to a video really quick just to show how to remove that metal piece, because some of you guys will have to do that, but since mine was an aftermarket case, it didn't have that metal piece there. So I'm going to cut to a video really quick and you'll see how to remove that. I'm going to want to remove the actual metal piece from the faceplate. They tack it down with two tacks, one here and then one up here. So you're going to want to remove those. Solder is the best way to do it. I mean, with a drill bit is the best way to do it. As you can see, it comes off pretty easily after that. It just slides right off. That right now. As you can see, the spot that I use is pretty much just by eye. I just pick out a spot and throw the case fan in. Yeah, you can see this one. Simply start working away at it. So there you go, there's your hole cut. It is a bit messy, but you do get your hole done. And that's exactly what I wanted to do, so I don't really care about the mess. It can always be cleaned up. Okay, so now that I have the hole drilled, I went back and I just went just quickly and sanded it down, just so the hole's a bit cleaner. So now what you're going to want to do is take your 80mm case fan and just simply pop out this wire. See, wires popped out. Just drop that through. And then what you're going to want to do now is just simply line up the case fan. So what you're going to want to do is just start with one hole, I recommend, just so that you can screw it in somewhat, and then your fan will be held to your case. It'll just be less likely that you'll mess up. Now I'm going to switch to the larger drill. So now what you're going to want to do after you've secured the actual fan onto there, see I only have one screw holding it in. That's just so that now it'll be held in place and make my life a hell of a lot easier when I'm trying to make these other marks, just because it's not going to move around and it's not going to end up being way off or anything like that. It's just a lot better if you do it this way.
Now you can see I have all 4 marks. Now I think it goes around. Here are the final ones.
Okay, so on to the next step. Okay, so what you're going to want to do now is take your wire snippers, wire cutters, whatever you want to call them. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't change what they are. So simply strip your wire. Okay, so now that you have the wire stripped, you're going to want to take your soldering iron. I'm just going to put flux on it to make a better connection. Not needed, but I recommend using some flux. So now that you've soldered on those extra extension pieces of wire so that you'll have that extra wire on there, you're just going to want to cover that in electrical tape. And you're going to cover each one, don't tape them together. So if your connection on the end of your fan looks like this, because some of yours may actually look like that, some of yours will be easy and they'll already be marked red for positive, black for ground, or negative. You can call it either or. So with this fan, to figure that out when you have these 3-prong connections, is simply turn these 2 bumps to the bottom. And when looking at the front of it, it will be, the first one will be ground, the middle will be your 12-volt positive, and then the last one will be usually used for reading the RPM of your fan, but you're not going to want to use that, so simply cut the last one off and don't use it. So starting from the left would be number 1, and at the right would be number 3. As you can see, they have it marked here for the ground, but the other 2 you don't know. So when you're looking at the back, you're going to want to make sure that this piece is towards the bottom, and then just look at the back and you can see it'll be ground, 12-volt positive, and then your RPM reading, which you're not going to want to use. So now what you're going to want to do is simply drop the wires through again and connect your fan onto your actual case. Okay, so now that you have your fan connected and you have the extension wires put on and you have them taped up, then what you're going to want to do is go into your Xbox 360 and pull out the DVD-ROM drive and Also the air duct. This just makes it easier to get at that joint that I'm going to be soldering to. See, now it's completely open. Going to be soldering right there. Okay, so I'm going to take my fiberglass scratch pen now and clean up that trace. What I'm doing is just removing a coating that they put on top of here. So now I'm going to take my soldering iron and place some solder onto that trace. So where this will be connecting to is right on the, if you look at these, there'll be 4 connections there, and there'll be one to the front, the bottom right. And that connection is the one that you're going to want to solder to. The only reason I'm using this connection is because I've been using it for the past about a year, well, 3 years, and then I don't know, it's Xbox Live safe, and it hasn't hurt my Xbox in any way. So this is where I recommend hooking up your fan to. Okay, so as you can see, well, I don't know exactly how well you're going to be able to see that, but I do have it soldered on there now. And it is at the far back connection. So what I'm going to do now is simply go over and clean off another point, which I'm going to be using for the ground. So you're going to want to clean off this piece. So now I have that scratched. I'm going to go back in and just simply solder it. Well, actually I'm going to put a bit of flux in it. Okay, so now what you're going to want to do is solder the ground connection. So what I just did was simply went in and scratched the chrome off of the power housing. They placed just a housing that it's grounded, so as long as you solder to there you should be fine and have a proper ground connection. Okay, so now that I have my ground soldered and the power soldered as well, so there's the power, ground, and now what I'm gonna do is just put some hot glue on top of it. Okay, so now I have that hot glue on there. Okay, so now that I hot glued, get this the hell out of there. Now that I hot glued the actual connections, you can see when I turn it on, the back fan turns on as well, and bam, you've got yourself your case fan. So now what you want to do is simply put your Xbox 360 back together, which I'm going to do right now. Just put in the extra wire, simply lay it along there. I'm pretty sure it's going to be pretty basic. I'm not going to show how to actually put it back together because you should know how to do that. Here's the finished product. As you can see, fan turns on when the Xbox 360 turns on, and it will turn off when the Xbox 360 turns off. And you can see it's actually pretty quiet. You can barely hear it. It's like that on the other one as well. It's actually not that loud. Your DVD-ROM drive is probably louder than the actual fan, so. My fan is, there's another fan on. My computer is louder, drowns out that fan completely, so. But there you go, there's the finished product, and thanks for watching, and comment, rate, subscribe.